Hello, School of Health Freedom. I am so excited today to present to you my daughter. She is 6 months old. Her name's Veronica. We call her Vivi. And I brought her today because she's been sick for a few days and I just find it endearing. It's her first time being sick and I'm like, this is so fun. We're gonna doctor her up and take care of her and help her through this. She's got some sniffles. She's got quite the cough. And when she coughs, you can hear way deep down. Can you cough? You cough for me? No, you just think it's funny when I'm doing that, huh? So, when she coughs, she obviously has a sound of a lot of mucus down in there. So, what I wanted to teach today is how to take care of babies. And there's some basic tools that are very, very helpful in taking care of them. So, first of all, when a child gets sick and they're coughing up here, it's important to know that you need to clear out their bowel first. You need to make sure that they have a lot of flow of fluids and there she goes, hacking some of it up. I'm sorry, I think it's so cute. She needs to have everything, all of her eliminative channels open. So just make sure that you keep the bowel flowing, and it's a good idea to use what's called Kitty Reg. Kitty Reg is of the Kitty line of things. So these are the Dr. Christopher Kitty formulas, and the purple label, this one's not the purple label, but imagine that it is, and it says Kitty Reg on it. The Kitty Reg formula would be what you use to keep the bowel flowing. To keep their kidneys flowing, which is their other eliminative channel, just make sure they get lots to drink. When they're nursing, which she is, have her nurse quite a bit. She's also really started to like water, and so I take distilled water and boil it, and then she can actually drink it warm, and it's kind of soothing on the throat if she drinks it warm. And you can also put minerals or other things in there, vitamins, things like that from the health food store. The other eliminative channel is her lungs, and so to open up her lungs, which that's what she's having a really hard time with right now, it's important to do a few things. You do not want that airway to get so congested that, let's say in the middle of the night everybody's asleep, you don't want her to be suffocating without you knowing it. So there's a few options. With my son, when he first got a sickness like this, and he was this age, we went into the pediatrician's office, my uncle's office, and he had, there you go, there's that sound. See, that's deep down in, and you can go with a recommendation from your pediatrician to the hospital, and it is a natural thing to do. They just put a hose down them and suck out the mucus. When you don't have those resources, or if you don't have $300 a pop to go to the hospital to do that, there's some other things that can be done. But do not deny your child medical care. You would seriously regret it if the child needed something and you weren't following that inspiration as their caretaker. And you have a right to that inspiration to know when to do things and when to not. So as an herbalist, it's very important to do preventative care so that if you don't need to do the more expensive medical procedures, even if they are natural, then there's some tricks, some things that you can do. Just prevent it so you can save money, time, and it's kind of hard to see them go through the hose. It's not very fun. There's a couple things that help them to breathe. So if you have a humidifier or a diffuser, like an essential oil diffuser, it is really important to keep the air moist around them. So each night what we're doing with her is we have this beautiful swing that's really easy to just put a nice sheet over. It's a cotton sheet so that it breathes and air can still flow in there, so she has plenty of oxygen, but it also kind of creates this fun little tent. And if you can create a small space, or a humidifier can get in there and really put a lot of humidity into the space around them, it helps so much. And then if you can boost it with eucalyptus, eucalyptus by itself is fabulous and it's strong enough and good enough. There's also other formulas by companies like doTERRA. Their Breathe formula is fabulous. And I have used Breathe and I've used eucalyptus. I've had the same result. It's not necessarily one or the other that does a better job according to my experience with it. But I do like the smell and the fact that the laurel leaf and peppermint and other things are in the Breathe formula. Sometimes with the super, super young babies, you gotta be careful if you're putting peppermint on them. And so you just diffuse it or put it in the humidifier and allow the air space around it to dilute it and for them to just breathe it into their lungs. This is a defense formula, a lot like the doTERRA On Guard that I mix myself, and you have the recipe to make it. And I actually put the eucalyptus and the defense formula into the humidifier or a diffuse. I alternate and diffuse either or of those. Those have really been helpful. And so what I'm doing is just making sure she can breathe every night. We also have a monitor in there, and the monitor is on louder than normal so that we will wake if she's struggling for anything. A way to open up the chest is with a baby, you always put lots of oil on first. So you can use olive oil, or you can use coconut oil, or olive oil is more mild. They could have allergic reactions to coconuts if they're not exposed to them yet. So make sure that you rub into the chest some oil, a carrier oil that's mild, and then you can put eucalyptus right onto their chest. When they're this young, tiny, tiny bits. You do not want to burn them. And if they start screaming or their skin starts getting red because it is burning them, which is one of the reasons why I avoid, the blends that have peppermint and more super cooling or super burning type sensations on the skin. You can put more oil on there. And then after you put the oil on, then water can carry that away. So you can wash it off, but the oil is a better thing to take away the sting. And you just continue. You could even put them in a bathtub and put tons of oil on them, wash it away, but know that the bath water is going to have the essential oil in it, and then it might burn all of the body if you don't dilute it properly. And so you just really need to slather them with oil, wash it away with a washcloth, slather it with oil, wash it away with a washcloth, and then bathe them so that the dilution happens. Essential oils are extremely strong, which is why they're so antiseptic, which means that they kill bacteria, viruses, parasites, fungus, things like that. But they are also so strong that you have to be very careful. With babies, it's a good idea to rub things right into their feet. And if you know reflexology, it's a good idea. You can look that up online. It's a good idea to rub their feet. If you don't know reflexology, it can be as simple as, just start rubbing their feet with some oil and put maybe just one drop of an essential oil in there. A defense formula if it doesn't burn their toes, or even just eucalyptus. If you can find the lung area, then you just rub it and rub it and rub it. Again, if you don't know, the way to know what area is being stressed is get used to feeling for what are called crystals or little hard spots. And when you feel, it's kind of like when you have a knot in your shoulder, and massage therapists are like, whoa, there's a knot right there, but it's on a smaller scale, it's just teeny. You would just massage it and rub it and stimulate that area because it helps to detox, it helps to get some of the congestion out of them. So The other thing is with the airways, when they close up, it's really important to have some lobelia on hand. I've given her just one little drop of lobelia to open up her airways. She doesn't love the taste of this stuff, but I just do one little drop on her lip and she takes it in. And she usually wants me to give her something else that tastes better. Either that or she'll go, I'm already done. That last stuff didn't taste very good. And you notice she's wearing a bib. This is her Kiddywell formula. Oh, she let me give it to her. She's wearing a bib, and that's important when they're sick so that you always have something to wipe with or to fall on. So this is the Kiddywell formula. When my children become ill, what I do internally to help them is the Kiddywell formula every time. That's the first thing I do. And then I watch their bowel movements and make sure that we keep those open. And then I monitor their fluids to keep their kidneys and things going. And this has echinacea. It also has, let's see, yarrow, elderflower, and peppermint leaf. And it's very mild and it tastes good. And my other kids, whenever one of them's sick, all of them get treated. That is key in your family. If you have a large family especially, and one person gets sick and you're like, oh, I'm not going to get sleep for how many weeks now? Because it's going to go from one to the other, and you're not going to get sleep with the one, you're not going to get sleep with the other, and then several weeks on, and then mom's kind of going crazy. You need sleep to be psychologically there for your kids, right? Trade off with dad as well. Dad can help with these things. Sometimes he needs direction. Sometimes dads are just right on it. So team up and help them and make sure that they get their doses. Children who are sick, as much as she is, she can have a dose of this every single hour. My other children who I'm just immune boosting, I'll just give it to them in the morning and night. Just make sure they don't get it. So that's a great immune booster. If you notice that children are having more of an allergic sort of a thing going on, or asthmas, it is very important to lower that histamine effect. Histamine, what is it? Histamine is, your body goes, something that you've just exposed me to, I don't like. It's foreign, let's get it out of here, let's raise all the flags, and histamine comes in and tries to take away some of those. But you can get too much of a histamine response, which then causes inflammation and too much fluid to certain areas, and it can actually close up the airways more and more slowly, which is what we call asthma. Really? She's got something to teach you. I think it's because she likes these. Do you like these? The Kitty Soothe formula is marshmallow and astragalus, and you'll learn later in our first aid kit sections that marshmallow and astragalus, when you mix them, the roots in a powdered form, 50-50, you're looking at the ImmuCalm formula. That's how Dr. Christopher makes it. So if you know the Dr. Christopher formulas and ImmuCalm and all the great things that we'll learn about on how to use ImmuCalm, use this with children to help lower that histamine effect. She's got a lot of inflammation, and so I'll wait, 5-10 minutes or so after giving her the Kiddywell formula, and I'll give her this. My son, I documented in your books that you've been sent, in the workbooks. It's workbook 2. I documented in that section the experience I had with my son. I'm pretty sure he had RSV and pertussis, whooping cough, at the same time. And with the two of them, he had a mucus situation that was really dire. It was much more aggressive than what she's going through, and I was ready to take him to the hospital at any time. He spent 3 days with me inside of a tent because he was like 2, and they're crawling around, and they're not going to sit in a baby swing, right? So instead of putting a sheet over a baby swing, we set up a tent, and the tent is where we had the humidifier. Constantly had the same things in there. The Breathe formula was in there. Okay, so back to the story of my son. We spent a day, we dwelt in the tent for 3 days. And it's just one of those cute kitty tents, you know. Humidifiers there, we had the essential oils going. Breathe was not only in the humidifier as a diffuser, but I was also putting it directly on his chest with some carrier oil there first. And he would get some of that on his chest about every 15 to 30 minutes. I was right on it. We had, in order to avoid going into the hospital and stay on the preventative side where we actually needed their help, I was awake for most of those 3 days. And every 15 minutes, boom, on the clock. I had a little timer down there because I'm not good at keeping track of time. The timer went off and I had like the next cycle. And so at the top of the hour, I would give him Kitty Well, which has echinacea in it. You got to know the actions of this. I knew that, okay, echinacea, it's going to boost the immune system, but it can also sometimes boost the histamine effect in the body. And so if there's a closing of the throat with an asthmatic reaction, there are times, not all the time, and it's rare when it does happen, that it will increase the the asthmatic sort of coughing and also with bee stings and things like that with kids. If you go to an echinacea or Kitty Well formula to help with the bee sting and it gets worse and the inflammation gets worse, it just means that your body needs to go the other way and it needs the Immucalm or the kids version, which is Kitty Soothe. So top of the hour, in the first 15, I would give this, and then 15 minutes later, I would go to the calming agents, which the Kitty Soothe calms. And I had to give Lobelia, and if you saw her reaction, she was pretty good when she took the Lobelia, but it's in a vinegar. My son just didn't like it, and he would fight me and didn't want it. So I figured out that if I was going to give it to him anyways, I was just going to juice up this formula with both things. Here's how you do it. I actually think that this formula, the Kitty Soothe formula, is a better formula once it has Lobelia in it. They don't make it that way because, you know, people who are using this formula have allergies, and if you have allergies to vinegar or Lobelia, they don't want to manufacture it that way. So you create it as you want it. In this size of a bottle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there you go. I had the Lobelia and the Kitty Soothe mixed together, and I would just give it to him. And if I needed a stronger formula, I can always make more Lobelia if it's not working. Lobelia is very precocious. You cannot use too much or it will be an emetic, kind of like Ipecac. In other words, you can use it to make a person throw up. And it works really well. That's when you take large amounts. But when you take just one little drop, maybe up to 3 drops for an adult or a larger child, then it just calms and it soothes and it opens airways. Kitty Soothe was the next 15 minutes for my son. And mind you, I kept putting on the Breathe formula every 15 to 30 minutes. So, the next thing that I gave him, which was the 15 minutes after, so at the 45-minute mark, was the infection formula. I'll just show you. This is labeled as to when I made it, January 31st, 2016. I put whose it is, it's VV's, and INF. It can be as simple as that. You need to label these, but this is the recipe that you have, and it's the infection formula. the way that I learned about this is there was a gal who came in while I was a wellness counselor. A baby was in the hospital, and the inspiration I got was to teach her how to make this. The baby, within 2 days, 3 days, was out of the hospital, and I was holding it in my arms because the mom was so grateful that we found something that was working, because the hospital, with all of the wonderful things that they were doing, nothing was working. And so she went home and made this infection formula. The way I made it was just like the recipe says, and it's for babies, so it's the smallest amount. It's in workbook 5, and this is the INF formula. So you look up syrups and you make it with the INF formula. So you just make an infusion or a tea, and you boil the water and you put half a teaspoon steeping into that water, and after it steeps for about 20 minutes, you just strain it out and add enough syrup to double that amount. So in other words, I had a half cup of tea and I put a half cup of glycerin into it, and the glycerin creates the syrup. That is preservable in the fridge for a long time. And then you just have to have a medicine dropper. You have a smaller one or a larger one, and I just give her a dose of this. The dosage is in there in your workbook, and on that 45-minute mark I was giving that same amount to my son. So again, he was 2.5, so he had twice as much as she's getting now, but on that 45-minute mark it was like clockwork. He had it, and that was over. For older children, like my 12-year-old, when she gets sick with those things, I give them the Super Garlic Immune formula, and she actually likes it better than she likes the infection formula syrup. The infection formula syrup has to be made a lot stronger for an adult, many, many times stronger, and this is already super strong. So what is the Super Garlic Immune formula? It's the anti-plague formula that Dr. Christopher felt inspired would help in the last days for all the plagues that come. And why? If you knew how much garlic was in this one bottle, oh my goodness. I mean, if you were to go visit the factory on the day that they're making it and you see all of the garlic, I sometimes think, how did they get that truckload in there? They've got a ton of garlic in there. And then they have these food processor things. Everything's in this sterile room, and they chop up the garlic and they steep it in the apple cider vinegar, and then they're making the other herb infusions, and then they put it all together and they put the glycerin in it to preserve it, and this is an amazing product. When I recently had mono, or at least the signs of mono, and I seemed to have the blood work that showed that I had the Epstein-Barr virus, and I called my naturopath, and he goes, well, you were out of town when you had all the symptoms, so what did you do? I said, you better betcha I had a bunch of this stuff. I went through 2 bottles of the Super Garlic Immune formula, and he goes, that is a lot of garlic. I said, yeah. He goes, how did you guess like that? Well, in workbook 5 it tells you the remedy for garlic breath and the garlic stench that comes from your body is parsley. So if you have a way to juice it or blend it, it really helps quite a bit. So those are the things for children. You also will learn some more things about children and using the children's kit and ear oils and things like that. It is a good idea to put some ear oil in the ears whenever they come coughing or whenever they present any kind of symptoms, because children tend to get ear infections. So that is our segment on children. Actually, let me add one more thing. My son needed electrolytes, so I wanted to show you some options of electrolytes that can go into water so that you don't have to go into the hospital for fluids like he did. This is an Organa mineral drink. They are Organa, like live minerals from a plant source, and they're amazing. I mean, just stick them into your water. I take a whole gallon of water Yes, this is like the gallon of water that I usually bring around with me everywhere. And I'll put a full capful in the whole thing. And then for a baby, I showed you her bottle already. You don't want to put very much in there. They don't need a lot, but just enough to make the water alkaline. I'm just putting a few little drops into hers. Because if you can keep electrolytes going through them, remember the body works in priorities, and you need to make sure that the salts and the minerals and the electrolytes are all balanced. Otherwise the body will start throwing off water to make the right concentration within the body of the salts and electrolytes first, and then you can rehydrate. So that is a dangerous situation. It's usually where you're in the hospital. And so some other things you can do is, this is a young Thai coconut, and I love the electrolytes in here. I just love coconut water. I actually lived on coconut water during the whole birth process with my daughter, and the way that I get the coconut water out is you just have to stab into here or drill into here. There's different instruments you can use that you can find for coconuts. And as long as you can get a hole in here, then you tip it upside down and let it drain. And there's a ton of water, of coconut water inside of here, and that is so rich in electrolytes, and it also has natural sugars in it, and so it's even better than the World Health Organization's recipe for creating an electrolyte drink, because it has the right amount of sugars and every single one of those minerals that you need. And if you can get your kids to drink it, and if they're not allergic, like I wouldn't give this to a baby who hasn't had coconuts yet until they're maybe a year old, but if they'll drink it later, they'll stay hydrated really well. Right balance, correct electrolyte balances. If not, you can go get some electrolyte packs, or I gave you a recipe in Workbook 5, and that recipe is the World Health Organization's recipe for making a small amount of the electrolyte balanced add-in powder to your drink kind of a thing. If you make it on the larger scale, you need to use the metric measurements, because when it goes down to a small scale, the measurements all come out to be, I believe it was like a half teaspoon of everything. But when you go bigger, the recipe changes. So just know that if you make a large, huge, several gallon container of this stuff, use the metric units and convert those over. But if you just make a little packet, go ahead and use those half teaspoon version that I created for you to be able to easily make a whole bunch of little packets and keep those packets everywhere you go. Put them in your first aid kits. Alright, and that is the end of the extra children's segment that I wanted to teach you about today.